Hello all. Before we begin the video, let's discuss CloudFoundation. CloudFoundation is the premier online training platform to help individuals and organizations gain knowledge and skills in the ever-growing cloud computing industry.
So we'll start with a workflow action script today. So I'll just give you guys a little background about workflows. So workflows is, in general, right? So workflows are basically part of, or we call it as in NetSuite terminology, we call it suite flows. So workflows is, in workflow is how do I put it? Yeah, so as the name specifies, right? It actually used or you utilize a workflow to perform some activities. Or perform some action when there's a flow, like when a flow of execution happens. So, for example, you have, let's say, you're creating a record, right? So you have basic actions are like when the page is loaded, and then you have when they have entry, and then you have before the record submitted. When they have, then you have exit, and when you have, after record exit. So these three functions are very similar to user events, so it is nothing but a sort of event only which is happening, right? So you have, before before record loaded, before record submit, and after record submit, and then you have entry and exit. There are multiple actions or multiple events which are available. So what we do, it is actually something which is configurable in UI. It is not. You don't write a script or anything. You configure a workflow. Define the right action. And you can run it. It could be a scheduled or an event trigger. So if you've scheduled it, it will be scheduled on a particular time. Whatever you define and schedule, if it is an event-based workflow, then you have, one. Whichever event you have decided or mentioned there, it will trigger, or that particular event. And so if you go to customization, workflow and workflows so you can create a new one, let me just So both of you are very familiar with the flow diagrams in general. Right. Like software methodology, we have general flow diagram. So what happens to the flow diagram? You go to a particular flow. You have your conditions. Based on the condition you go to the next flow. If the condition is true, you go to some place, and condition is false, you go to another place. And all that. And then at the end you have finished your end thing, right? This is the general flow diagram. In workflow also, you design or build something similar to that? Right. You have your start when the execution starts. Then you have multiple stages. You can put your conditions also on the stages so that your flow can change. And then you have an end. And then you can, recall, and everything can happen. So it looks very similar to that. Let's say, if I try to create a new workflow. First of all, you need to mention that which record type you are triggering that workflow on. So, for example, let's say, if I say sales order, so transaction is the record type, and then you have subtype, so subtype, let's say sales order. You can give a name ID, and all will be generated again. The releasing status could be: when you say suspended, the workflow is basically inactive. You know it basically. You can call it an undeployed, and then you have not initiated, which means the workflow on top. Trigger. Testing is something which will trigger only for you, I mean the user who is setting it, and then you have release status. Right? You have this inactive checkbox also here you have. You can enable logging so that the logs will be captured. Then you have in the initiation section we have two categories or two options. One is scheduled and second is event-based. So if you select event-based, you can select the event. It could be on trigger or viewer update also. So let's say, if you want to trigger the workflow on create and edit both, you select both of them. If you want to trigger only on create, you can select only create, or if it is only on edit, you can select viewer update, and then you can define or select your trigger type. So before record load, before record submit, and after record submit. So for example, let's say, if I say before record submit, then you have event types. You have create, delete, copy, cancel, approve, reject, all that option, right? So let's say, I select create and edit both. Or here also I select create and edit both, right? Then next thing you have is context. Now we have web services or user interface. Then you have other scripts also. So all these lists of contexts are there. Where you have CSV, import, custom GL, you have a script also MapReduce, client scheduled and everything. You have REST web services RESTlet. So these are, these are all contexts which are there. So by default, all of them will be selected, except web application and web store if you have. If you come across a scenario where you're using these two contexts, you can select that as well. This is your event definition. Now you have your condition, on which condition you want to trigger a workflow. If there's no condition, which means it will trigger for all the same sort of create and update or create and edit. Basically, if you want to specify a condition, you can put and build a condition here. You don't have to write that also, right? So there's a condition option. So let's say you have a field which is, let's say, date. Date is greater than, for example. No, let it go. Date is greater than or equal. For example, let's put June 1st, 2022. This is in this format, DD month and YYYDD01 month, June 2022. Similarly, you can put condition on any other field. All the same sort of fields will be available here, and you can say yeah. And then you can say, you see, the condition has come here. If you're not putting it on this condition, you can have a safe search condition also. It will give you a list of all the safe searches, and you can select that safe search, which means it will trigger only on that safe search results. Okay, now, with this we can have the basic workflow created. Now, this is how your workflow is right now.
And finally, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.